Funds accounting is the method used by Indiana Public Libraries to establish a budget for where money is received and dispersed. And the Department of Local Government Finance notes that public libraries have more than one fund, and this provides flexibility in financing the library operation. After viewing this presentation, the user will understand the fund concept and the definition of fund types or groups. Funds are essential for budgeting. There is brief attention to government accounting and financial statements. These are covered in more detail in the bookkeeping and accounting presentation. Funds are categories for separating revenues into which funds may be received and dispersed. Typical funds include operating, improvement reserve, construction, bond, rainy day, capital projects, gift, and petty cash fund. Some funds are required to be broken down into smaller categories for expenditures. These categories are called accounts. One of the most important funds which must have accounts is the operating funds. Funds are categories in which money is received and dispersed on paper. They are not actual bank account or investments. You could conceivably have every last penny you own in one banking account in one bank and have several funds. By statute, the most you can have in one bank is $100,000. State Board of Accounts outlines the kinds of funds found in public libraries. See Chapter 4 of State Board of Accounts Accounting Manual for Public Libraries, where details of funds are found. Note, all funds except the operating fund are established by a board resolution. Resolutions are found on the Library Development Office website at http://www.in.gov/library/3289.htm. They are broken down into the categories of resolutions to establish a fund and resolutions to close a fund. The funds accounting method has a built-in rationale or story for understanding how money is spent. That is, operating or general fund is expended for the day-to-day operations. Some capital expenses are in the operating fund, like the purchase of books. LURF and rainy day are funds that are earmarked for capital expenses and general expenses that arise in the day-to-day operation. All the funds are budgeted annually through the gateway in order to spend from the funds. As detailed in the ledger, explained in bookkeeping and accounting presentation, funds are segregated by all the money, but all the money can be kept in the same bank account. Please note there's a limit to how much money can be in one account. The limit, according to the State Board of Accounts, is $100,000 in one bank. If the library has more than $100,000 in transaction accounts, it must use at least 2 depositories, which have been designated by the library board. Cash on hand can be tracked by fund. This is useful in determining whether the library is falling behind in expenses, keeping up, or is ahead of the expenses. Communication of this information is in the financial statements that the library treasurer uses. It's always good to have a statement that tracks appropriation balances month to month and year to date. This is a definition of a fund. It summarizes my previous statements where the various funds are monitored, keeping track of the budget and financial health of the library. If you look at this definition of a fund balance, it contains language associated with for-profit institutions. Libraries are nonprofit or governmental bodies and are not thought of in terms of capital or net worth. What is tracked and reported in the gateway is financial health of a unit. and also the information on cash balances as a percentage of the budget is noted. So you don't need to be too concerned with the equations, except that you need to track fund balances. So a definition of a funds as it is related to the equity equation is summarized here. Public libraries keep track of expenditures and revenues in each fund with attention to fund balance. These are the fund groups associated with Indiana Public Libraries. A particular library would not have all the funds, though everyone has an operating fund. It is also important to establish the LERF and Rainy Day Fund by board resolution. And if you receive funds from the Indiana State Library for broadband connectivity, you need a technology grant fund. And the agency fund, Evergreen and Plaque, are optional depending on whether you are collecting funds for another agency. Some funds are required to be broken down into smaller categories for expenditures. These categories are called accounts. One of the most important funds, which must have accounts, is the operating fund. Indiana State Library typically see audit exceptions for where a fund is reduced below zero. This underscores the importance of tracking appropriation balances. Sometimes at Indiana State Library, we see a public library state technology grant fund balance go below zero. Once the balance is zero, broadband invoices are paid from the operating fund or an unrestricted gift fund. You can transfer funds or borrow funds. This requires a resolution. Transferring from a fund is governed by the DLGF Transfer Procedure Memo. This memo can be found on the DLGF website at http://www.in.gov/DLGF/2444.htm. Navigate to the year 2014, and there you will find in the list the July 24th, 2014 appropriation memo. Besides talking about additional appropriation, the memo talks about the transfer to the Rainy Day Fund. Please read the memo and be familiar with these procedures. Only the revenues derived from the levying and collection of property taxes or special taxes or from the operation of the political subdivision may be included in the amount transferred. One caution is don't borrow from the State Technology Grant Fund. Generally, the temporary transfer is a prescribed period and returned in the budget year. There are occasions when there is an emergency that allows the return of the funds beyond the budget year. Note, an emergency requires a board resolution that is filed with the State Board of Accounts and the Department of Local Government Finance. The operating fund is a designated fund for the day-to-day operations of the public library. Remember also that it is associated with a tax levy or tax rate. The annual budget established the appropriations or the money to be expended during the year. So remember, even though you have money in the bank, you may not have the authority to spend it. The authority is the appropriation. A gift fund may be either a restricted or unrestricted fund. Gift fund is money accepted by the library board as a grant, gift, or donation. Restricted is the donor has attached terms, conditions, and purposes. Unrestricted, the donor has not attached terms, conditions, or purposes. These funds are not associated with a tax rate or tax levy. An agency fund are used to hold funds to repay to the agency they belong. For example, a plaque fund holds revenues from selling plaque cards. The money is returned to the Indiana State Library quarterly. This money does not belong to the library and is not reported in a financial statement. Funds accounting is a crucial concept in understanding the managing of public library finances. The funds explain how the money is to be spent. They are associated with accounting for revenue, expenditures, and fund balances. The concept of funds helps you understand the segregation of money, how to borrow and repay a fund, and the importance of monitoring so the balance does not go below zero. Knowing how funds operate helps with understanding transfers. This gives you a picture of the overall financing of the library from a variety of funds. Each fund has to be tracked with a budget and accounting.